we will start with a topic called Bible versus culture. Я хочу начинать такое понятие Библия против культуры. Это новый сериал, который я хочу начинать. Я не знаю, если пастор будет продолжать и других, но если что, будет классно, если нет, ну ничего страшного. Тогда это будет эксклюзивно, со мной будет тогда. Почему мы будем это поговорить? Why are we going to talk about this? Часто мы принимаем разные вещи в детстве и принимаем их как истина. Обычно это фундаментальные вещи, такие простые вещи. Обычно это, часть есть какую-нибудь правду, есть часть. Но это не всегда есть. Но и бываем за это, мы, можно так сказать, верим, что сразу, если так было написано, или кто-то так говорит, наверное, там написано Слово Божие. Особо, если это хорошие, верующие люди, которые это говорят. Возможно, это вообще противоположно в Библии. Даже в Библии написано, что надо постоянно меняться наша форма зрения, менталитет. Это не то, что касается русском или славянском культуры, украинском, даже американцев, в любой стране в мире. И там написано в Римляне 12 главе, 2 стих. Я буду читать на английском. And do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. Они еще передают наушники. И это важно, это делать. Почему? Потому что даже в древнем мире, когда было во время Иисуса Христа и до этого, фарисеи, которых мы любим, говорим, такие классные люди, они строили некоторые законы или правила, которые было хорошее намерение, чтобы не попасть в зло или попасть против Божьего закона. И это хорошо, если так делать. Говорит, что если родитель говорит, что нельзя печенье кушать, то лучше не сказать не печенье кушать, а просто не ходить близко к кухне. Тогда ты не будешь кушать печенье, например, да? Но евреи, они что-то чересчур это делали. Я перехожу на английский, так что дай Бог переводчика, спасибо. Here are some laws that the Pharisees created that were not very good. Imagine you're on Sunday, you feel like you have some snot, you're a little bit sick. You have no paper towels, and you decide to, and you spit on the ground. By the Pharisaic laws, you will be guilty of sin by doing that. Because your spit disturbed the dirt, therefore you plowed on the Sabbath day. It's a little bit of extreme. Imagine plowing, you think you have to take a hoe and you kind of hit the dirt and you make a line and that's tilling it, you pour water on it, you're plowing and you're working the field. The Jews said that even if you spit on the ground on Sunday, therefore you have sinned against the Lord because you might have considered yourself plowing, working. If you're at home, it's very hot outside, you have AC conditioned house. It's very nice. We in Arizona understand this very well. And a fly decides to fly in because it smells, not only that it's cool, but they smell some wonderful meat. And you wave your hand and you accidentally hit the fly and kill it. By the Pharisaic laws, you have committed a sin because you have now hunted on the Sabbath day. It's a little bit of extremes, right? And what good was that to do? So that you don't break the law of going to hunt for your food. But who eats a fly? Who here eats flies? Okay, that's good. Thank you. I'm very happy that you don't. There are people that do, but not in the United States. In parts of Africa, they'll take honey, they'll mix it with flies, and they'll eat that together because you get it tasting okay, it tastes good, and you still have protein. In some places in Africa, not everywhere. The laws were so crazy, I would be guilty of this specific sin. This is one of my biggest sins. A woman was not allowed to look at her reflection on Sunday. Why do you guys think that's the case? Why couldn't a woman look at herself through the mirror on Sunday? Because if she notices the gray hair, she might pull it out on accident. That was considered sin, guys. That's working. Bad for any woman who cuts her hair or makes herself look pretty. You've sinned on Sunday. On the Sabbath, yes. I'm very guilty for this because on Sunday I take an hour just to shave my head and make myself look nice. I take another 45 minutes to make sure my beard looks okay. I spend a lot of time on Sundays. I'm happy that Sunday church starts at 2 o'clock. But see, these false ideas and thoughts are not very good, and they're against biblical, because what was those laws created for in the first place? Don't work on Sunday because you should rest. Jesus himself said that the Sabbath was created not man for the Sabbath, but Sabbath for man to enjoy, to relax. And they lost the whole thought process of what the Sabbath was for. But those are just a couple of the laws. There's many laws out there that has nothing to do with the Sabbath, but are out there. And I want us to be able to look at then our culture stuff. What do we accept as truth? And forget to realize that these misconceptions are actually against the Bible. And today, on our first, you could say, sermon of the series, is called Bible versus Culture, Indulging and Appetite. Right before the holidays. It's going to be perfect. One of the big 7 deadly sins of the Bible, or the Catholic Church preached out, is gluttony. They have 7 of them, like I said. Envy, slothfulness or laziness, wrath or anger, gluttony, pride, lust, and greed. Some of these stuff were like, okay, that makes a lot of sense. Some of them are very bad for you. Slothfulness, maybe not so much. I like to procrastinate sometimes. Gluttony doesn't sound that like a very bad sin, though. Worst case scenario, you just get fat, right? That's kind of the idea of gluttony. But we're going to touch on that topic, and we're going to see what maybe the whole sin of gluttony, the whole fullness of it, and why the Bible specifically says it's very bad for you. In fact, it compares that to being drunk, and in fact says gluttony is idolatry in itself. And we're going to look at the very first misconception, that you must be a glutton if you are overweight. This is the very first misconception. One of the things that we do is we often judge people by how they look. It's a normal thing. It's what people do. We judge what shoes we wear, right? We see if they're a kind of higher, lower class people based off shoes. We can judge people based off what clothes they wear, whether or not they are, they take care of themselves or not. We can see what political affiliation people are based off what color hair they have or lack thereof. Right? We already have these ideas or judgments based off people, how they look. And our weight is not something that we are, sadly, we're not free from. Especially if we see a bigger person, an overweight person, eating food, and we automatically think, oh man, maybe you should eat a little bit less. I mean, look at your body. I know I do that, because that's the reason why I say that. I'm okay with being honest with how bad of a person I am, my thoughts. I sin like that too. Even though that portion of food is very small compared to most people, what people eat. And there are many reasons why people can be overweight, right? One of the biggest thing is that it could be medical conditions. If you have any heart problems or any liver problems, automatically that affects your weight, whether you like it or not. If you have hormones, for women, this is very popular, if they're pregnant or not. It's hard to control your weight when you're pregnant. Especially when somebody says, you're eating for 2, you have to eat some more, come on, a little bit more. And when you look at that, it's easy to kind of judge people based off their weight simply by being overweight. But the other thing is that sometimes we're not eating a different amount than what we were before, but our lifestyle has changed. A very good example is me. It doesn't look like it, but I used to be 15 pounds heavier back in 2013. I just finished high school, and in high school, I had 3 different gym classes. So every day, I would spend at least 2.5 hours doing gym at school. Running, lifting weights, doing stuff. And I was just 17. I just turned 17. And I still was, as people say, a growing boy. I remember I would go to home group. I went to home groups on Sundays. And I would go to a good friend of mine's. To me, he's like a pastor, a mentor, Eric. And he would always have food after his home group, which is a very good thing to do, guys. And he would have snacks. He would have sandwiches out. We'd have tea. And I would regularly go into his fridge. He was 30 years old. I was 17. It's kind of a weird dynamic. And I would grab into his freezer and pull out a quart of ice cream and eat that while everybody was enjoying their food. And then I would still have tea and the food with them. I ate a lot. And then I'd come home and go to sleep, wake up, and do the whole workout routine at school all over again. But as soon as high school ended, I went to Bible school, those who know, from Jacksonville, Florida. And over there, I switched from having 2.5 hours of gym, workout routine, basically throughout the whole week. Saturdays and Sundays, I was running around doing stuff and being part of clubs, to all of a sudden sitting 8+ hours in a classroom and eating the same amount of food as I did before. And in 6 months, I gained 15 pounds. It was very scary. When I look at my photos, it kind of scared me because of the skinny little boy, and all of a sudden, boom, out of these cheeks that are really big. And often, people that are overweight, it's not that they're gluttons, it's just they changed their lifestyle but didn't change their diet. Sometimes not eating the right diet. You don't eat a lot, but because it's a bad diet or not a good diet, it affects your body differently, right? They found that people on average, if they stop drinking soda in their diet for average American, they'll lose 5 to 10 pounds in 3 months. Cutting out Coca-Cola, Sprite. That's what Coca-Cola does to you. And the same thing, being overweight doesn't mean that you're a glutton often. Often means that you're either not eating right for whatever your lifestyle is because it's changed, or you have medical conditions, right? Or things that are affecting it. And I agree. Not every person that's overweight is not because they're gluttons, but some of them are gluttons. And the Bible, we already know, is very clear about that. If you read Proverbs 23:20-21, it says, "Do not join those who drink too much wine or gorge themselves on meat, for drunkards and gluttons become poor, and drowsiness clothes them in rags." It also says that in 28 verse 7, a companion of gluttons disgraces his father. So we know that the Bible is very against gluttony. It's very against overeating. I think we are aware of that. It's not a good thing to do that. I think the biggest misconception is that as Christians, whether you're in the Slavic culture, American culture, and other places, automatically, if you don't, that you are overweight, you must be eating too much. So that's the first misconception. So as Christians, I want to encourage you, don't look at people's weight. Second of all, because we know that sometimes your weight is not based off of your body. Second of all, I want to say that skinny people, the next misconception, is that many of them can be gluttons. We often think that skinny people are not gluttons. They probably eat nothing. In fact, it's the exact opposite. I think some of you guys are familiar with this. In the Roman Empire, the Greeks, the Romans, they practiced this very regularly, where they would go to big parties and celebrations. And what did they do? They would eat food, like usual. They'll eat a lot of food, like we would eat on Thanksgiving and Christmas. And then they'll feel so full, right? That's a normal thing. When you eat too much, you feel very full. But then what they'll do is, because the party hasn't ended and they need to keep eating, they go into the bathroom or to somewhere hidden and they would throw up. They'll puke it out. And then they'll go back to partying and eating some more. Such a wonderful thing. This, I believe, Americans, as an American culture, practice this a lot. I don't know about the Slavic culture. You guys probably know this better. But I think American culture definitely falters in this. And in fact, maybe we don't see them partying in the sense of like the Greeks and the Romans laying down. They have servants and grapes and fruits and such, and drinking wine. But we often know that if you go to colleges or anything like that, there's often people that drink a lot and people that get drunk. And then because they drink too much, they throw everything up. And they drink some more, eat some more. But there's sometimes issues where people have it where it's actually a mental problem with them. In fact, they could have a psychological problem, a medical condition because of that. For example, bulimic. If you guys are not familiar with that, it's basically somebody who is very, very thin, and when they eat food, even though it's a normal portion of food, they feel like they overate. They feel very bad and they feel very guilty. And that's a sin, to feel guilty for doing that. And then what they do is they go throw it up because they don't want to be doing the sin of overeating. Even though they're going to go back and eat some more and then throw it up. It's literally wasting food. And it's not bad that they're eating it. They feel guilty for that. And I believe that that is a form of gluttony, a form of idolatry, saying, I must look beautiful, I must be perfect, I must stay thin, I cannot give the portrayal or the image of being an unhealthy person, and a bad person. And so the idolatry is hidden in that, saying that I will starve myself, I will throw up and be able to do that. There's even physical medical conditions with liver, not just in gaining weight, but in fact the exact opposite, where you cannot gain weight. I like that, personally, because I get to stay thin forever. But there are extreme cases. There's a disease called lipodystrophy. If you look this up, you can actually find people that have the image of that and look and what they go through. It is a very scary disease. I would hate to have this specific problem or this disease. And what it is basically your liver cannot process fat. It does not build it into your body like a normal person. Regular body health, BMI, again, this is just a weird science, is 15%. That's how much fat you should have on your body, to be healthy-ish. Again, plus or minus, depending on your lifestyle, what you're doing, but should be around 15%, average person. People that have lipodystrophy has less than 5%. But what's even scarier about this is the fact that they can't stop eating. The reason why is because the body can't sense the fat. When you have no fat on your body, the hormones are not released from the fat onto your brain to say, hey, you have already some extra stuff, you don't need to keep eating. That's what fat does. That's why we need it in our lives. That's why we need it in our bodies. And the brain then tells the stomach to say, hey, give the feeling of hunger. Not just when it's an empty stomach, but an actual feeling of deep starvation. These people can eat 4 bowls of cereal, 2 humongous club sandwiches, and a dozen of eggs, and still feel like they are starving out there for breakfast. This is not a whole day. This is just for breakfast. These people have a very serious condition when they have that. And that is a form of gluttony, literally. Well, that's because it's a starvation. It's a medical condition that they have. And they can't gain that body fat. They start having blisters on their whole bodies because their body's in process and sometimes it just goes straight out to their skin. And what happens is that they feel like if they're not eating, they feel like someone's punching them in the stomach. That's how big that pain is. And it's very scary. I think that's in a form, and sometimes skinny people are, they can keep eating and eating, if they have the wonderful genetics, or maybe the other side, a bad form of genetics, and they can have that being very bad in their bodies. It says in Proverbs 23:1, you must sit, when you sit to dine with the ruler, know well what is before you, and put a knife to your throat if you are given to gluttony. Do not crave his delicacies, for the food is deceptive. And this is specifically talking about those who would party specifically, but I think in a way, there's a lot of things that when we look at skinny people, we don't realize that they can be gluttons, or very deep gluttons, but it's hidden, it's covered, we do not see it. So that's the second biggest misconception that we have. And the third one, and the last one, I think this touches every one of us. I don't think this is just Slavic culture. I think this is just humanity in general. I love how C.S. Lewis puts this, and this is the idea that gluttony is only when eating in excess, in excessiveness, when you overeating. Usually that's how we define gluttony. But C.S. Lewis kind of puts two ideas that comes with this form of glutton of delicacy. This is how he puts it. And this is probably the most obscure one because we know that eating food is a survival, it's a need. And the thing is with delicacy, you do not overeat. You're literally not eating more than what your body needs. But it's the word delicacy that really kind of changes the idea of where it goes to. In Screw Tape Letters, it's a book, and it's about where it involves a conversation between two demons who are trying to bring about spiritual destruction of the humans who they have been assigned to. That's what the book Screw Tape Letters are about. So it's letters from one demon to another saying, this is what you should do, or advising how to make people falter. And I'm going to read an excerpt from this to understand the fullness of how this glutton of delicacy works. If you guys are able to read the book, I recommend it. This is only one small little letter compared to the whole book, but it's a very powerful one, I think, and you often overlooked. God bless you, translator. My dear Wormwood, the contemptuous way in which you spoke of gluttony as a means of catching souls is your last letter. Only shows your ignorance. One of the great achievements of the last 100 years for demons has been to deaden the human consciousness on that subject, so that by now you will hardly find a sermon preached or a conscience troubled by the whole length and breadth of Europe. This has largely been effected by concentrating all our efforts of glutton of delicacy, not glutton of access. Your patient, or the demon which he's in charge of trying to hurt the person, your patient's mother, as I learned from the dossier, and you might have learned from Globos, another demon, is a good example of this. She would be astonished one day, I hope, will be, to learn that her whole life is enslaved to this kind of sensuality, which is quite concealed from her by the fact that of the quantities involved are small. Again, these are small quantities, not large. But what do quantities matter, provided we can use a human belly and palate to produce querulousness, impatience, uncharitableness, and self-concern? Meaning you're not able to control yourself by what you're doing. You're impatient. You're wrathful. You're doing other types of sin, which we say, oh, that's not good, for a little bit of delicacy. Glubos has this old woman well in hand. She is a positive terror to hostesses and servants. She is always turning from them what has been offered to her, say, with a demure little sigh and smile, oh, please, please, all I want is a cup of tea, weak but not too strong, and the tiniest, weeniest bit of real crisp toast. When people come up to her, and the hostesses, so that to translate better, they're giving her a plate of food that usually, if you're like in a party, and everybody's being served a type of food, and they bring food to you, you're like, no, 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 please, I can't have that. That's too much. I can't have that. Just, instead of bringing this whole plate, go to the kitchen, get me a small cup of tea and a small cup of toast that has nothing to do with anybody around them. Nobody's eating that. But I just need to have only this little thing. That's it. Just a little cup of tea and a bit of crisp toast. Out of everything that everybody else is eating. That's normal. That's regular food. And you see, because she wants is smaller and less costly than what has been said before, she never recognizes as gluttony her determination to get what she wants, however troublesome it may be to others. At the very moment of indulging her appetite, she believes that she is practicing temperance. This is a godly trait. Temperance is being withholden or being in control. In a crowded restaurant, she gives a little scream of the plate which she overworked waitresses has set before her, and she says, "Oh, that's far too much. Take it away and bring me a quarter of it." If challenged, she would say she was doing this to avoid waste. She's saying this so that she avoids throwing food away. She's making a big problem for everybody. She's saying this, I just need a little bit so that people don't throw the food away. In reality, she does this because of the particular shade of delicacy to which we have enslaved her is offended by the sight of more food than she happens to want. This Screwtape letter, I think, is very powerful. I think it scares me the most because I have an issue with this too in my life, personally. And I'll share that in a little bit later, hopefully. Maybe not. Maybe I shouldn't share it. In other words, she can't control her appetite on small, certain little things, but it's just a little bit. It's like when we come to our children, right? I have a 2-year-old daughter, and we have to eat regular food like meat, pasta, rice, things like that. You give that food first, and then you give sweets to children, right? Because if we give them sweets, they have to keep having sweet. So you try to say, no, you have to have self-control, and by doing that, we're going to give you the main course food, and maybe then we might give you the sweets, and that's just like a reward for eating your food. But what happens as we get older, we don't have somebody telling us, only a little bit and that's it. You have to eat the main food and the sugar. But we still want a sugar right away. And we say, I need to have that piece of candy, just one piece of candy, but I have to have it. And sometimes candy is not good for you. It's a delicacy, technically. Having organic apples is a little bit of a delicacy. You can buy the regular apples, but you have to have the organic ones. And that's the idea. You're not having a lot of it or something that's very considered healthy, but because you cause in this way, Screwtape letters, a disturbance, you're causing other people to do a lot of work for little, it's considered a form of gluttony. There's a motive and thought behind this gluttony of delicacy, not able to control your urge. That is talked about not having self-control. And this is what gluttony is, not having self-control with food, whether overeating or forcing others to do something so that you can have a little bit of something, of some nice food. Proverbs 25:16, if you find honey, just eat enough. Too much of it and you will vomit. This is not about overeating in general, but even too many of nice good things is bad for you. Proverbs 27, it says, it is good not to eat too much honey, nor is it honorable to search out matters that are too deep. In other words, you hear something, this is kind of what it's talking about, the context. You hear a little rumor, and all of a sudden you have to go and find out the whole story of the rumor. Right? That's not a good thing. But even the same way, that's how food is. We can't control we have to control our desire. Say, no, there's that over there. That's not what I need. It's a delicacy. I don't need to force other people to bend down or to kind of push them so that I can get this one small little thing or a lot of that same thing. This can go in other ideas, not just in delicacies like in, again, sweets. I talked about the GMO of food, right? You can go saying, I'm going to just eat healthy, good things, but I must order an organic, non-GMO, fat-free, animal cruelty-free, grass-fed milk with no pesticides, and all organic, gluten-free toast with a side of cage-free, non-hormonal, grass-fed eggs. It's a very big, long list of expectations. I'm going to give a moment for the translator to translate that. It is not normal to expect everybody to completely break down and do something. It's like you go to a party, you are a vegetarian, And everybody else are meat eaters, and they all have a bunch of meat. And they didn't think of salad because nobody eats meat. Or if they did make a salad, they made a chicken Caesar salad. And you sit there like, man, I'm vegetarian. You know what? I'm going to tell the hostess, they got to make me a regular Caesar salad with no chicken. Just pull the chicken out. It's not that hard. But sometimes people are able to push that delicacy, that form of saying, I'm going to have a little bit. It's something that's very healthy, and I'm going to force somebody else to make sure that they are suffering from that. I have a problem with this. Every time I go with my wife to eat pho, we go to a special place called Cyclo. If you guys are in the neighborhood in Chandler, that's the best place to go for pho. I have an issue of overeating and the delicacy, and this is a very good example of my sin here on full show. We go over there, and instead of buying 2 separate bowls of pho, we buy one big extra large pho so that we can both, me and my wife, eat on a cheaper budget. It's just $2 extra rather than paying $15 for a bowl. But on top of that, of eating all that stuff and pho, I have to have salad rolls right next to it because the peanut sauce is the bomb. It's amazing, guys. It is just to die for over there. You guys, if you're going to go there, you have to buy the salad rolls. And I know I have an issue where I like to eat and overeat on a certain meals at times, and then to make myself feel better, other meals I'll eat less. Other times I tell my wife, no, I'm not hungry. I don't need no sugar. I don't need no cake. No, I'm going to control myself. But then when I'm near pho, I had to have salad rolls. And I'm hurting my own budget. My pocket hurts when that happens. That's why we don't go out to eat that pho very often, but I love to. Or if we go to sushi, I can always have one more. Or maybe in the Russian culture, пельмени, right? You boil so many пельмени, it's too much for everybody. But because it's just one пельмени, you're like, oh, that's not much. Oh, I have one more. One more. Okay, fine, one more. And by the time, before you know, you already overate, there's no пельмени left, and everybody's, That's me with sushi. I go to sushi train with my wife sometimes, and I could have like 10 different plates, 15 different plates, and I still would want more sushi because all of them's all in front of me going, and I want to grab more. The idea is control of your food, what your problem with gluttony, with food. And Jesus talks about that in Corinthians, that we need to have self-control in all things. Why is lust a bad thing? Because if you don't control yourself, there's a lot of bad repercussions that can come from it, right? That's why we often say, no, don't hold hands when you're dating, often, right? Especially to teenagers, if they're trying to date. Don't hold hands because you're pushing yourself to that direction. That's not good. But when it comes to the idea of food, often we skim this across. Oh, it's not that big of a deal. Especially many of Ukrainians, I know this is a very popular thing with Ukrainians, and I'm not just pointing to Ukrainians. It's on other parts of the world too. But in our context right here, Golodomor, this phrase, it scares every Ukrainian, I feel like. And I feel like it's being passed down, this idea from generation to generation, where whatever food that they give you, you have to eat all of it. Because if you don't, I remember the days of Golodomor, and maybe I can hear my parents, I would think my parents said it once, maybe. And it was funny because they didn't live through that. And they don't say that ever. They just made it, I think it was like a joke or something. But I remember that they said that as a joke, or to say, hey, eat everything off your plate. I mean, sometimes force people to be gluttonous, to eat more for a good reason, of course, for good intentions, but causing them to sin or to do things that are not good. And I think that we as people, as Christians, we live in a day where we should be concerned about not just, okay, there was a time then, and this is what we live now, but to have the practice of self-control with food, with our diets, whether it's overeating or delicacy. And Jesus Christ says, hey, even if you have problems with this, the beauty about Jesus and why we have Christ, and I think this is wonderful, is that he says that whatever you have, just come to me, lay your burdens, whatever it is. It could be medical conditions, it could be all that you're going through, right? But also this sin of gluttony, this sin of lack of self-control, can often push us to do the wrong things. I don't tell my wife to make tea anymore, because at one point I would drink like 5 or 6 cups of tea a day. And I would force her to make it, but sometimes it would be like right after dinner, I'm like, oh, I need to have some tea. and I'll be like, honey, go make me some tea. And I'm not forcing her. I'm saying, if you like, you can make it. I'm saying in a nice way. And she does it lovingly as a good, wonderful wife. But I know that I'm just taking the tea because I just have that craving for it. It's not, I don't need the tea. It's just there. I'm just craving that. I just need to drink that. I could just grab water and drink. And often with tea, there's sweets that come with it, all the other things that go about it. The Italian culture, they could spend 3 hours eating dinner. They could sit there and just eat. And a lot of cultures out there just talk about, hey, our lifestyle, our family, or the things that we do is surrounded and revolved around food. And it's hard to say no to, because if you don't eat, what happens? You die. It hurts if you don't eat. And so we are it's almost something, a necessity. And often that are necessities and lack of self-control, we fall into that. That's why it's called sins. Or great sin, when we don't control. We have that lack of self-control. And I want to leave with this, guys. And I want to make you feel bad, because we're about to go into the holiday season. I know there's going to be gingerbread houses. I know there's going to be candy for our kids. I know that someone's going to make a shuba at home or olivier, and that's a very wonderful dishes. Plov, that's a very big Russian thing, Slavic thing. But I want to just encourage you guys, not necessarily, but to have the idea of self-control. That's saying, hey, if somebody says no, don't force them to eat more. And then also, hey, just because you don't finish everything on your plate, because maybe you saw it was really good and you put a lot of food, doesn't mean that you have to force yourself to eat it. And just because there's other people that are not around you and they're having their food and they're busy, you don't force other people to make something special for you. Because the time of holidays is that we should be enjoying it. The point of Christmas is for Christ to be around him, about who he is and how good him coming down onto this earth. It shouldn't be about food. The food is just a celebration. When the Jews celebrated Passover, they made lamb and bitter herbs. I got to tell you, that's a very strange holiday. I don't know why you eat bitter herbs. Yuri, sorry. I think it's a very strange thing that Jews did. But I think it's a very good point that, yes, you get to eat, but remember, hey, the bitter herbs is from the sin, or, that, hey, this is God saving you. You're supposed to not do this. You're not supposed to have these bad things in your life. To remember the trials that you were in Egypt. In the same way as Christians, we have to remember that, hey, we were once lost and became saved. That's what the point of Christmas, all that's going about. And I kind of want to tie this all together with the holidays, what's going on, to remind you guys, keep it all focused on Christ. Keep it focused on what he has done. Enjoy the food. But remember, it's not about the food. It's not about the cranberry sauce that grandma makes on Sunday or on Christmas. It's about the time where you spend together fellowshipping and being able to preach the gospel of Christ with those who don't know Christ, and to spend a wonderful time together. We're going to stand up. We're going to pray. We're going to end it here. I want you guys to pray about this. Maybe to think about the people that are out there that you're inviting to their holidays that are coming up, and to think, Christ, what can I do? Yes, I'm making the food. Yes, I'm going to bring people together. But how can I touch their lives different, so that it's not revolved around food, so that we do not focus on the sin of gluttony, the sin of just trying to overindulge ourselves in certain things, but to really focus on the meaning of why we gather together. And that's what's most important. That's greater than anything that's out there. And that in the end, I think it's good to party. It's good to eat. When we come and meet Jesus face to face in heaven, we're going to be partying like crazy. We're going to be eating. Jesus says he's going to share wine with us that's never been drinking before. And I'm looking forward to that. But to remember, it's not about the wonderful food that we're going to have over there. It's about who we get to spend that celebration with.